I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. I wanted to issue a big apology here right at the top. My power has been out after a particularly chaotic trip to visit my family. Here in Oklahoma, we had an enormous windstorm on Saturday night, and it devastated the area that I was in up in around Tulsa, and my dad's backyard was completely destroyed, like a bunch of things in the backyard, big pots, his grill, a big sail he had just installed, everything's destroyed. So we ended up leaving early, but our power was still out here in Oklahoma City, and it was so hot that the baby just could not stay in the house. He couldn't sleep. So we ended up having to go to a hotel for a few nights, and then the hotel had a pipe break, and so they didn't have running water for a little bit. So everything has just been completely chaotic on my end, trying to keep a baby's day as normal as possible. Anywho, now we will have News du Jour back up and running as per usual. I record out of my house, so I am dependent on my home having power to produce the show. But you can always find updates like that about our show on our Instagram, which is at News du Jour podcast. News du Jour.podcast on Instagram. Anywho, I wanted to issue a happy belated Juneteenth as well as a happy Pride Month. We are not great with celebrating holidays on here, and that is something that I really want to get better about and I'm working on. I also wanted to remind you guys that News du Jour is partnering with Liquid IV to bring you guys a 20% off discount on your purchase. So if you've never heard of Liquid IVs, they're basically a hydration multiplier. We went over it more in depth on Friday's episode, but you can use the code DUJOUR, that's DUJOUR, to get 20% off when you order online from Liquid IV. Anywho, so today we have a lot to go over, so I really wanted to get through that and just jump right into our stories. We have 2 mini stories and then 2 longer stories, but they're pretty big, breaking news, and very important. Let's jump in. So many are saying that this is just a measure to avoid being accused of being biased, but the judge in Trump's Florida criminal case, you guys, she set a very aggressive trial date for August 14th. That is just 50 some odd days away from now. So this date is definitely subject to change, but it's setting the tone for this judge to really take this case seriously against President Trump because, again, in the past, she has been accused of being biased towards him. And just as a reminder, this is Trump's case in Florida, where he allegedly refused to return boxes and boxes of classified documents to the National Archives. Now, we also wanted to let you guys know for our second mini story that as of last Thursday, Jack Teixeira, the 21-year-old who leaked dozens of confidential U.S. military documents online, has been indicted by a federal grand jury. He has been charged with 6 counts of retaining and transmitting classified national defense information and could potentially serve up to 60 years in prison if convicted. These 2 cases unfolding simultaneously definitely calls into question how the U.S. handles state secrets and if we can be trusted by our allies to keep our secrets secret. And speaking of secrets, let's jump into the Hunter Biden story. So this is obviously a very important breaking news story that is very relevant to the upcoming presidential election. We obviously covered this in the past, Hunter Biden in general, on this podcast. He is the fallen son of Joe Biden who, for whatever reason, cannot seem to get his shit together. His hands are perpetually in the proverbial cookie jar. From drugs to women to white-collar crimes, this guy definitely has a troubled past, to put it lightly. And in the past, we've talked about how his brother Beau was almost kind of the angel to his devil. And having died young, Beau is forever memorialized as the good Biden son. And now with these charges coming out against Hunter while his dad is in office, I think he has cemented his perception as the bad Biden son now that he's 52 and still dealing with this crap. Obviously, that breakdown of Beau being a good son and Hunter being a bad one is simplistic. He definitely suffered a lot following the death of his brother, but nonetheless, this has become the public perception. So what exactly are these charges? What did Hunter do? And what are the implications of this? Let's get into the details. So Hunter Biden faces two different cases, one to do with his taxes and the other to do with guns. Neither are a good look, but he is pleading guilty to both, sparing us all yet another trial to follow and sparing his father the bad press. The tax charges are a misdemeanor, but they do involve him failing to pay over $100,000 in taxes on over $1.5 million in income. That amount he owed is more than a lot of Americans make in a year. So that is sure to upset the working class that Biden tries so hard to impress with his family stories. Those charges carry a maximum of 1 year behind bars. The firearm charge has to do with Hunter owning a firearm after he was a known drug user. Apparently, there are laws about that. I honestly had no idea, but probably a good thing. And it would have been a felony against the president's son, but the agreement lessened the charge. So his plea deal lessened the charge. He will also avoid jail time if the judge goes along with the Justice Department's recommendation of probation. But again, this is just not a good look for a president who is championing gun control. If his son can't follow our country's very relaxed gun laws, how can he expect anyone else to? The president and the first lady did put out a statement saying that they love their son and, quote, support him as he continues to rebuild his life, end quote, which he has been rebuilding for quite some time. But that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, I do think a lot of Americans can relate to this. We all have that relative that cannot seem to stay away from the dark side. And as much as we all try to help, where does the line of enabling start and finish? It's a tricky road to walk, and none of us have a map. And this case brings to conclusion the 5-year investigation against Hunter Biden, or investigation of Hunter Biden, which I'm sure the Biden family will be eager to wash their hands of. And for our second story today, I did want to issue a content warning with this story. This story involves people lost at sea. So a submersive vehicle has disappeared near the site of the Titanic. The most important thing to know here and to understand is that there are 5 people missing off the coast of Cape Cod, and they have limited hours left before they will most certainly die at sea. I need to get that out there right here at the start because the sense of urgency is kind of lost in a lot of the press that this story is getting. Obviously, there are a lot of fascination when it comes to the Titanic and things of that nature and billionaires being involved, but 5 human lives are at stake here, and that's what we need to focus on. Now, let's go ahead and get into the when, where, why, and how of all of the details behind this urgent matter. So there is a group called OceanGate that provides wealthy people with the opportunity to go down and visit the Titanic wreckage firsthand. Now, I say wealthy people because it costs about $250,000 to do this excursion. Technically, it's open to everyone, but with that price tag, it's pretty prohibitive to the average Joe. So there were a handful of people, plus the CEO of this company, OceanGate, on this ship going down on such an excursion. And according to ABC News, this particular type of submersive ship that they were on corresponds to a larger ship above the water via text message. But about an hour and 45 minutes into their 8-hour voyage, they lost that text message contact. And that is where the mystery begins. Grand total, they have about 96 hours worth of oxygen. But a lot of that time has already passed, you guys. I don't know exactly when you are listening, but at the time that I'm recording this, they have about 40 hours left. Since they have been missing, the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Navy have been mobilized, and they are searching both above and below sea. Airplanes are scanning the vast ocean in case they have somehow come up for air, and then deep diving vehicles are also going down to look for them underwater. But keep in mind, the ship that they are on can go down as far as 13,000 feet and has to in order to see the Titanic. Not many ships can do that, and there is a vast territory that they could theoretically be in. And the site of the Titanic takes the bigger ship 2 days to get to on its own. So they are way off the coast. And even if they find them, how to rescue these people may also pose some obstacles of its own, because you can't just swim them out when they're that deep underwater. That said, the U.S. military teams are doing everything they can to try and get these human beings safe to safety who are likely trapped underwater. But they are racing against the clock towards that Thursday afternoon deadline of finding these lost souls. On board, like we said, is the CEO of OceanGate, but also a billionaire named Hamish Harding, a Pakistani billionaire father and son, and lastly, a French diver who's actually made more than 35 trips out to see the Titanic in person. He first visited the Titanic back in 1987 as part of the very first expedition out to the site after it was formally located. The vessel is about the size of a minivan, so you guys can imagine the 5 of them are not very comfortable in there, and if you're claustrophobic at all, don't think about it. Again, the trip was supposed to be about 8 hours in total, so they weren't supposed to be down there very long in this small vessel, but now they've been in there for more than 2 days by the time that I'm recording this. So yeah, don't let your mind wander too much on that, because it's definitely terrifying. But I also hate to broach this subject, but we need to talk about it because it's possible that something happened to the ship when it originally went missing, that it sprung a leak or had another catastrophic event that caused them to lose contact. It's possible that these passengers died hours or even days ago. And again, I hate to talk about this because I'm a glass half full kind of girl, but it's obviously the worst case outcome, and it's definitely a possibility here. And I have to explore every possibility with you guys so that you have a good look at what exactly we're dealing with here. Also, I have to touch on the fact that there's something so haunting about the idea that potentially at the site of one of the most famous shipwrecks in human history, there may be a second shipwreck happening. And I'm sure there's a lot of conspiracies flying around online because there's already so many conspiracy theories about the Titanic. But I don't want to spiral too far into all of that because There's 5 human beings fighting for their lives, most likely, in this scenario. So let's just hope that they can be found. I wanted to get you guys the facts, and I hope this gives you a good sense of what's going on. Definitely follow along on our social media, because if they are found, we'll be sure to post there first. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "There are no secrets that time does not reveal." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfreemedia. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.